to start off with, I'd just like to say that I'm not like some composer expert or anything. I still have to look a lot of stuff up. But at the same time, I actually use it, which I was kind of astounded to find out that many people don't. With Drupal 8, it's really required. So, we can have fun and look stuff up together and try stuff out together. That's what happened at the Drupal users group in Waterloo. Lots of interesting questions and lots of controversy even about, hi, Jimmy Nash. He says hello. Lots of controversy even about, I use just Drush up and that makes things a lot easier for me and I don't see why I have to bother having to worry about dependencies and things like that. So, anyway, without further ado, we should get into it. So, the title is Composer, What Is It and How Should Drupalers Use It? And the presentation was by myself and my wife, but she won't be joining us today. And we are Woolwich Webworks. This is where we get to plug ourselves, yes. We've been working with Drupal since 2007. Allegedly, I've been working... I can remember it before then, but at least 2007 is when I got my Drupal.org account, so that makes it official. We do, front and back end development, DevOps, and you can find us at woolwichweb.works. Carrying on. So, what Composer? What is it, mate? So you can find instructions for installing it at getcomposer.org. It's really simple to install. Personally, I don't know how easy it is on Windows, but at least if you're using a Unixy kind of operating system, then it's easy to install. And I personally chose to install it globally. I haven't had any issues doing that. Hopefully, by the way, a slideshow isn't too weird and or boring. I wish I had a webcam, actually. Maybe I should sort that out for future streams so that you could see me and make this a bit more animated. Anyway, continuing on. So Composer it builds itself as a dependency manager for PHP. So, okay, what is a dependency manager, first of all? So if you imagine that you're building, I don't know, a Twitter clone or something, or some kind of chat platform, you start your project off, and then you need emojis in your chat application. So obviously, right, you go and find an emoji library on those internets. You Google around for it and you find it. And then you download it and put it into your project, and then say that emoji library also depends on some kind of Unicode library for PHP, for instance, just an example. So you'd have to download that as well. Well, that's what a dependency manager does for you. So you don't have to install all of that stuff. You just in this case, you just say, I want the emoji library. And then the dependency manager goes and gets the emoji library, and then it'll download all of the dependencies of that emoji library, including that Unicode library that I was talking about. That's all hypothetical, but I hope it gets you an idea of what it is. It was first released in 2012, which is kind of important for later. You'll find out why that's important later. And yeah, so there's several similar tools, like I forget what it is for Ruby, Gems. I forget the name of the tool though. And there's pip for Python, Cabal for Haskell. Oh, try to think of some other ones. But most modern languages seem to have a dependency manager that can download modules from. Oh, of course, NPM for Node. Who could forget that? So, yes, that's what it is. Hopefully that all makes sense. If not, post in the chat and tell me why I suck. No, just ask questions. So, why? What do we need Composer we've described what we use Composer for, but then, hey man, what's wrong with just downloading what I want? Well, okay, so hopefully I can make you all agree that including third-party code is a bad idea. For a start, when you've got your project, you've just got your project code in there, then you go and download a bunch of dependencies into that project and you dump them in there and you commit them to Git and you push them. That can actually lead to multiple megabytes of code, of even external commits. If you use a what is it, a subtree or whatnot, or a submodule. That's the word I was looking for. If you include the third-party code as a submodule, it gets. Actually, no, it wouldn't be so bad as a submodule, but let's not forget how horrible managing submodules is. But anyway, the point is, it creates a lot of bloat in your repositories. I've seen some very slow Git clones and Git pulls because you're pulling on all these third-party dependencies and all of their code. You can't. So if you have that third-party code in your repository, you can't really tell where it came from, can you? Just by looking at the code. Well, maybe the README says where it came from, but you can't be sure. You also can't tell if someone has come along and applied a patch to it. Maybe they left the patch there. That would be nice, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they just edited a few files in that third-party code. Who knows? Until you go to update it, and then it screws your whole project up. So, no, not good. Also, another nice thing is that if you download... Well, sorry, another bad thing is if you download third-party code, how do you know that tarball isn't corrupt? You haven't checked its SH hash. You haven't, checksummed it against the canonical checksum that's on the website. Unless, well, you might do that manually, but the point is, you just download some third party code. You don't know whether that's corrupt without checking yourself. So that's why I hope everyone can agree in the chat right now that including third party code is a silly idea. It's very, very bad. So for Drupal, we've had our own solution for a while, and this is where the fact that Composer was started in 2012 becomes important. Drush Make was started in 2009. Drupal has been around for a long time, and it's often we've often tried to find our own solutions to deficiencies in PHP itself or the PHP ecosystem. So, this is where the term Drupalisms comes from, and we have a lot of them. And there's good reasons for that. But anyway, Drush Make was started before Composer, and it was started as a separate project and eventually merged into Drush Core itself. So if you type Drush Make and then the name of a make file that looks like this, my cursor over here, will it let me? Yes, it will. It'll look like this. Drush Make will go and fetch all of those dependencies for you. It's also used on Drupal.org to create distributions, which, if you need to know what distribution is, you can go on Drupal.org and look it up. They do push them pretty hard, although they've, not met with that much success, which is a shame, I think. Drush Make, it doesn't do everything for you. It's not really a dependency manager either. It's trying to solve the same problem as Composer, but it doesn't manage dependencies for you. For example, you have to put in, CTools really here. Let me back up, let me reverse a little bit and tell you what we're looking at here. This make file, this is a Drush make file for Commerce. So these are all of Commerce's dependencies. So when you want to make a Commerce project, actually no, I think this is the Commerce Kickstart, that's it. Right, so if you want to make your own Commerce project and you're using Drush Make, then you would have to create your own make file with, CTools, and I want this version of CTools. I want this version of Entity. So it's a bit dumb in that respect. You just tell it this is exactly what to download, and it'll do it. It won't search for the dependencies of CTools or Entity or anything else. And I really hope my mouse battery isn't about to run out, because that would be embarrassing. Now, yes, I think that covers everything for Drush Make. So onwards. Right, of course, I've already covered most of this, haven't I? So manual version tracking we talked about. There isn't any dependency resolution. It is Drush Make is mostly a Drupalism, which is what I meant with this top item here. It's mostly Drupal only. So there's, what does it do? Really, if you specify something, let's just reverse and have a look at this make file for Commerce Kickstart again. What was I thinking about? Mostly Drupal only. So, right, you say project CTools version. That is just going to go to Drupal.org and it's going to download CTools at that version, right? If you want to specify code that's external to Drupal.org, then you kind of have to do, well, something similar to this patch line here. You have to say, all right, I want to get from this specific Git repository, and then you name the Git repository and you say exactly which version you want, or it could do file downloads and so on. But it's not as elegant as most dependency managers are. And part of the reason is that it doesn't really have a concept of repositories in the same way that something like Composer does. It's just, there's Drupal.org, and then there's everything else. Oh, right, yes, and there's no command line interface, so you can't just type in drush make, add, something to my make file, like add views, or, well, we don't need to do that anymore, add rules, for example. You couldn't say, just drush make require rules, and it would just do it and find the correct version for you and all that good stuff. Doesn't do that, sadly. So now, so we've sort of made the case for why Composer is useful by itself, and how Drupal has solved the problem of dependency management in the past, or, well, at least just automatically downloading dependencies so you don't have to have third-party code in your repositories. But how does Drupal and Composer mesh together? How are we using Composer in Drupal? Well, for a start, Composer is used by Drupal core now in Drupal 8. Many modules are starting to require it. Commerce, for instance, requires Composer, and so does Facebook Instant Articles. Those are just two. There are quite a few more. You can. So we got a repository now for Drupal.org. Has its own packagist, which is the Composer repositories terminology. So you can download any module using it, which is just great. Drupal.org, so I don't know if you know, but Drupal.org has a policy that you're not allowed to put any third-party code into like modules and theme repositories if you're uploading them to Drupal.org. I don't know if any of you have tried to contribute to Drupal. I have a few contrib modules that are horribly out of date. More on that later. But so you're not allowed to include any third-party code in those repositories. So something like Composer is just great for that, because you can have a composer.json file in your... I'm getting a bit of ahead of myself there mentioning composer.json, but you can have a file in your module repository which says, hey, my module requires these other things. Drush Make had something similar, but I remember it being a massive pain in the bum, mostly because it didn't do the dependency resolution, so you'd get conflicts in the versions of dependencies, which was just shocking. It was, oh yes. So yeah, when you were using Drush Make for your projects, and a module had a module.make file in there, then it was just a disaster. It was horrible. But composer.json file in a module repository is fantastic. Now, what else? Many libraries require it. So if we want to get off the island, we've got to use Composer. So what else do we have? Yeah, Drupal 7. That reminds me, Drupal 7 does seem to have problems with it. I mean, at least in my experience, it hasn't been much fun to use Drupal 7 with Composer. I think part of it is that there's no autoloader, and I'm not exactly sure what the reasons were, but what we got was we had Facebook Instant Articles, on a Drupal 7 site. And Facebook Instant Articles, how I said many libraries require Composer. Well, yeah, Facebook Instant Articles is one of them, even on Drupal 7. So what we experienced was we were trying to use Composer with Drupal 7, and even deploying completely unrelated theme changes and such to our site would just get white screens of death in production. And even sometimes you do like a continuous deployment would just work. It would it would put out the new code. It would get your theme for you and whatnot. And then an hour later or so, we do a deployment. An hour later or so, on production, you get a white screen of death. And sometimes it would happen, and other times it works fine. Oh, by the way, I think right now our deployments are working fine for that site with Facebook Instant Articles. Give it a week, though, and they might start breaking again. It's horrible. So I don't know. I'm sure other people have had different experiences with Composer and Drupal 7, but ours has not been pretty. Now, another thing about how you use Drupal and Composer together, you've got to shift your brain a little bit and start thinking about, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a project, and, it might be a client project or whatever. It's a commerce project, or it could be a shop. So this is my shop. Now, Drupal is just going to be a dependency of that project. And it's just going to be a dependency in amongst a lot of other dependencies. So that's just a different way of thinking about it. You're not really just starting a Drupal project. You're starting a project where Drupal is a dependency. Great. So we've reached the end of the slideshow. So hopefully that didn't bore you all too much.